Hello, Reluctant Messenger Unleashed Nation. Welcome to episode 16 as we cover chapter 5, Cosmic Contacts. I'm your host, Donna Rebido, and with me is author Candice Sanderson.
Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad you could join us today.
Welcome back, everybody. Open your books. Let's go to chapter 5, page 75. And remember that we're now covering one chapter each episode. So we're covering chapters with a broader stroke. So to me, Candy, this chapter is about healing, being open, having the ability to contact other interdimensional beings. The veil is thinning, and empaths are now seeing, feeling, and communicating with the formerly unseen elementals of Earth. And who are these cosmic contacts? And what kind of things are they communicating to you?
Well, Donna, the chapter begins with a very detailed dream about crystals, about the sun that has some very specific divergent rays, and a lotus flower with 1,000 petals. My curiosity led me to Google 1,000-petal lotus. And first of all, I've got to say, I was shocked to learn that that is what the crown chakra is often called, the 1,000-petal lotus. Back then in my journey, I barely knew what a chakra was. So I certainly didn't know that that energy center at the top of your head, first of all, was called a crown chakra, much less that it was associated with being the 1,000-petal lotus. I love this because once again, I'm verifying parts of the messages. And each time I get a search engine hit, I'm just amazed. But it made these messages much more believable. But after this dream, the next morning I went to the computer, I sat down to document the dream, and it immediately transitioned into a message.
And folks, because we're doing this a little different, we're jumping ahead to page 77, and we're looking at the October 19th, 2013 message.
Yes. And this demonstrated the progression of my spiritual journey. I was learning about this overlap between the dream state and the waking state. Before my opening, and you've got to realize that was just 2 months before this message, I had not really understood how important my dreams were. And although I didn't know it at the time, the dreams were sometimes actually messages. I wasn't ready to hear messages back then, but after my spontaneous opening, I was better prepared. So they flowed just like that flower in the first message. And on the next page, page 78, I realized how the earth is sentient, quote, as much alive as we are. And this was a throwback to that mystical experience with the Royal Poinciana tree. I was starting to see things like trees and planets and rocks as being living beings.
And what I like about it, Candy, is that the messengers are leading you on this new journey step by step. So you're learning about the dreams. It's not only with the dream, but they're also telling you about the very nature of our planet, describing Earth as a sentient being. That's something new. They've established this foundation, and now they're going to build on top of it, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely, Donna. And by taking these steps, these small steps, I'm simply observing and documenting. And I'm thinking, not too scary, right? I mean, so far, just the edges of the envelope are slowly expanding. They're just nudging at the edges of my comfort zone. Not enough for me to stop, but it was just enough to pique my interest. Until page 79. And it's like, uh-oh. There's this mention of fairy folk and other dimensional beings right in the center of the page. Donna, it reminds me about the ladder of enlightenment from the last chapter that we covered, changing perspectives. And if you remember, I thought the ladder of enlightenment was too bizarre to include it in the book, but I knew I had to. We saw how significant that event turned out to be. All these validations that I would have never predicted. Well, it was the same thing here. It felt disingenuous to leave that fairy clip on the editing floor, but there was more to it than that. I knew that this message was important. It tied together several aspects of the dream that I had had, a dream that showed how the sun was healing our planet. The sun's rays had changed, and now I'm receiving a message from someone or something that says they are the ones who have, and I'm at the bottom of page 77. They say, we have changed the energies we give your sun in order to give Mother Earth a more intense experience. It's about a planetary shift, something that I didn't fully understand until 2020 when life changed for all of us when the pandemic hit. But that's a story for another time. But as Earth shifts to higher vibrational frequencies, and we're now on skipping over to page 79, we see that things will change, including us having, quote, an awareness of what your kind refers to as fairy folk or other dimensional beings. As Earth shifts to higher vibrational frequencies, we see that all things will change, including us having an awareness of what we refer to as fairy folk or other dimensional beings. I learned that fairies have been around for a long time, helping our beautiful planet. Donna, as bizarre as this sounds that people will see fairies, it's happening now, at least for some people. Let me share a couple stories. First is from the renowned researcher, medical doctor, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's so well known for her studies on death and dying. But in a book called The Wheel of Life, she tells a story about meeting a woman in Virginia who had fairies who lived in her backyard. She literally stopped Kubler-Ross on the road while she was driving past, and she told her about her backyard fairies. Kubler-Ross took the bait to see for herself. The woman led her to her backyard, handed Kubler-Ross a Polaroid camera. Now realize this was years before we had digital photography. And moments later, when that picture developed, Kubler-Ross had photographed a fairy. Now, if we skip ahead in this chapter to pages 85 and 86, I share the story of Fatima, a friend from Brazil that I met at Monroe Institute. We were eating dinner at the Institute, and I still remember her opening her phone and pulling out this picture. It was a picture of a fairy. Her physician's husband was at a remote camping lodge in Brazil taking photographs. When he returned home, looked at his pictures, he had photographed a fairy. She's resting on a branch that leans out over a body of water. And I describe her as looking like an attractive young woman. She had clothing on, pale green clothing. She had shoulder length, light brown hair, but she was small and she had wings. So it's like she was, anything but ordinary. It was an actual picture of a fairy. I could see her face, her arms. She had wings that were light blue and they faded off to off-white near the tips. I wanted to actually use the photograph in the book. And through Fatima, I contacted the owner of it, and he said he wanted to write a book about his experience. And so he didn't want to release it, which is okay. But it was just amazing that people are actually seeing fairies now.
Well, I'm a scientist and
Yes.
I have a spiritual side. So I got to tell you this story. Candy, I've seen a fairy. I never thought I would say that to anybody ever. I still pinch myself, but I was out a couple of months ago. I would say more like springtime. And in our house, in our backyard, we have like 12, 18 rose bushes. So I was out early in the morning with the dogs, and I was over in the back by the fence, and there's 3 just giant rose bushes. And I saw something moving, and I thought, okay, it's an insect or whatever. And out of the middle rose bush, up came what I thought was a dragonfly. I thought it was a pretty big dragonfly. You know, sometimes you can have the 2 dragonflies together. And I'm looking and your brain, you're seeing it, but your brain has to process it.
Right.
I'm realizing that is not a dragonfly. What is that? And I realized I was looking at a fairy. This was a human looking body on almost like dragonfly wings. And as my brain is processing that, I'm going, you know how you have to take a second look? So I started to
Yes.
take a second look, and off she flew into the next yard over the fence. And I really couldn't believe it. I was just, ran in the house and I go, Mary Lou, you are not going to believe, but I think I just saw a fairy. So I'm telling you folks, yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Donna, I just want to thank you for sharing that story with us. Your story supports what's happening now. I've got another little story. There
Okay.
was a man that has contacted me after reading my book, and he reached out to me and told me a story that he had never shared with anyone. He said he lived up north, and every summer his family would drive, several hours to go to their family home
Yeah.
down south, and they would spend a couple weeks wherever it was they would go. He said when he was 5, 6, 7 years old, he remembers as they're driving through these woods, he's looking out and he sees a group of small people. He said they must have been fairies or leprechauns or gnomes, but small people. And he knew even at that tender age that he couldn't share that with anyone. No one would believe him. So he's lived his entire life, and I think he's in his 50s now, and he never shared that with anyone until he located me, emailed me, and told me the story. Now, for the rest of the story, a couple weeks after that, he went back and started reading my book again. And that's when he realized I was from Paducah, Kentucky. Well, guess where he was traveling to on his annual trip to meet family? He was traveling to Paducah. So that was just another little coincidence that just made me smile. But the thing about it is, more and more people are seeing
Oh,
things like
oh,
this. They're hesitant to talk about it,
oh my
but
goodness.
they just need an opening. Your story supports exactly what's happening now. On the top of page 80, we talk about the message talks about people's belief systems and how they will be, quote, severely challenged when they have these experiences with fairies and elementals, which, gnomes, leprechauns, whatever. But think about it, that would do it. All of a sudden, you see fairies and leprechauns, they're here now. We've got people, not only you, Donna, who was trained as a scientist, but medical doctor Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I've got the picture from Fatima, and now your story. But isn't this exactly what we need to
Mhm.
kind of catapult us out of our belief systems? We then begin to realize that we had these beliefs,
Mhm.
for example, that there are no such thing as fairies.
Mhm.
But guess what? Those are just beliefs. They don't represent truth, no matter how much we wish them to be. This first book that we're talking about, Tales from Beyond Belief,
Yeah.
we are slowly going through this book and trying to widen your view
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
life. Our beliefs are just that, beliefs. They don't represent truth. Truth, no matter how much we wish it to be, we cannot see the full picture by using our physical senses. We can only discover truth when we go beyond the physical. And these messages were so fascinating for me. And they were very different from what I'd had in the other chapters. So I had this major question looming. Who were these messengers? Who was telling me about the fairies? Who was telling, or what was telling me about these sun's rays that were changing? Well, I didn't have long to find out. When we go to the top of page 81, that second paragraph, I'm in October 20th, 2013, just a couple months after I opened. They say, we originate from a place that humankind refers to as Alpha Centauri. We have made connections with the Earth plane multiple times over millennia. It is now during this time when Mother Earth requires help with her transition that we are able to connect with others such as you. And then the next page, on page 82, I learn about Chiron. I had no idea who or what that was. Never heard the name before. But in my mind's eye, I saw the name, I saw how it was spelled, and I also knew how it was pronounced. This was getting crazier by the day, but it was also fascinating. I thought, Alpha Centauri, then Chiron. I was totally in uncharted territory. So Google to the rescue.
And I love that you had to Google both of them, Alpha Centauri and Chiron. What did you find out about them, Candy? And how are they helping us? How can they possibly be helping us?
Well, my connections to these star system, to these cosmic beings, was brand new for me. I'd never heard the word Chiron before. I really didn't know anything about Alpha Centauri. So I had to do the research. And what I found was, first of all, Chiron. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that there really was such a thing, spelled and pronounced the way I knew it was, that was orbiting the cosmos. Chiron is a hybrid. It's part comet, part planet, part asteroid.
Okay.
And because it is a hybrid, some clever scientists decided to name it, aptly so, after another hybrid, a centaur from Greek mythology. The centaur, you know, that half human, half horse creature. Chiron in Greek mythology was supposed to be the wisest and the most nurturing centaur. He was the tutor of Achilles and Hercules. I thought, great, amazing story. Then I thought, I wonder if there was a connection from this centaur and the first set of cosmic beings I'd met from Alpha Centauri. Well,
makes sense.
Google to the rescue. I researched again, and I learned that Alpha Centauri is part of the Centaurus constellation, also named after a centaur from Greek mythology, Centaurus. He was the father of the entire race of these centaur hybrids. You know, Donna, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what it meant, if it meant anything at all. It was just one of those findings that was fascinating, and it coincided with what I was learning. It connected the two cosmic messengers I had just met, and it made me smile. But what I really loved were the messages that they brought. What had started about a vivid dream was the basis for new messages. My new cosmic friends spoke about the rays of the sun and how they were changing, just like I'd seen in the dream. When we go to the bottom of page 83, they say that these changes will jumpstart our Earth into a new phase of being, one of purity, clarity, hope, and health. As she moves through her transition, she brings the human race along with her. To me, that last part was very significant because our planet could have decided to make this a solo trek, leaving us behind, but she didn't. This tells us that we, as humanity, still have an important part to play in this evolution of our planet.
You know, Kenny, that's really significant because I love that Mother Earth isn't leaving us behind. She could, based on all the things that we've done to her, but like a good mother, she's not going to leave us behind. And that's a really good point. Let's go to page 84. And that brings us to the brings page 84, and they're going to talk about the great shift of 2012. That's a lot of, there was a lot of numerology around that. How does the great shift of 2012 in numerology, how does that relate to you specifically?
Well, I can remember all the hype about it. December 21st, 2012. You know, we learned that that's when the Mayan calendar ended, and many people thought this would be the end of the world. That's it. Well, I had a very personal connection to that date. First of all, December 21st, don't forget, is my birthday. That's significant enough.
I wrote that
But
down.
right, don't worry, I'll remind you.
Okay.
But on 2012, that's when the earth was going to end. That's the day that I turned 62. That is the age in the US that I could start collecting Social Security. And I thought, timing is everything. Just my luck. The day that I'm eligible to retire and receive Social Security, heck, that's the day the world might end. I thought, great timing, Candice. Wonderful, right?
Oh, that's funny.
You know, I really didn't think that, but it did cross my mind, and the timing was very interesting. But I did some research on that infamous date, and I learned some things. First of all, December 21st is the winter solstice, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. So it ushers in a renewal of light. The days start getting lighter. On the top of page 85, I mention a book by Daniel Pinchbeck.
Yeah.
His book is called 2012, The Year of the Mayan Prophecy. He called that date the hinge point of the arrival of a more enlightened age. And Donna, that's what this shift is all about.
Okay.
It's not doom and gloom. It's a reawakening. It's a reawakening of consciousness for all humanity. That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
You know, the message continued, and once again, they talk about people. Oh no, here we go again, seeing elementals like fairies and gnomes. But something else I noticed, the number 7 kept coming up.
Oh, yeah.
At the bottom of page 86,
Yeah.
it says, your sun has 7 new sets of rays. Within each ray are 7 different levels of frequencies. Humans refer to this as the 7th heaven. For 7 times 7 represents the greatest level of frequency vibrations there is, at least in Earth terms. And on the next page, 87, they talk about 7 being a magical number. And just as when the 7 colors of the rainbow are present, then we as humans can see them. And they say that 7 represents change. And that's why there are 7 new rays that these cosmic beings have given our sun, which is their sister star, to help with the healing of Earth.
You know, Candy, I just want to interrupt you here and just pause for a minute and want people to understand the significance of this. So let's pay attention here, how the chapter started out. Candy starts out with a dream of crystals everywhere, and then the changes in the sun. Now we find out there's 7 new rays. And I want to refer to the 7 chakras, primary chakras. And those are the energy systems in the body. And also she talks about in her dream about the sun becomes a lotus with 1,000 petals, and it's a symbol for our crown chakra. I love that they're tying this all together between the crystals, the sun, the chakras. And it's amazing to realize this is happening now. And you're talking about 2013, and now we're in 2021. And the cosmic friends are telling us that they are changing the frequency of their sister star, our sun, to help heal our planet. And when you got these, you didn't even know about about COVID or the pandemic. And this just really blows me away that you got these messages in 2013, and here we are in 2021 when all this is blooming, if you will. It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it, Donna?
Yeah.
I mean, at this stage in my
Yeah.
channeling career, I'm almost overwhelmed by this information that I receive. But then all those validations and these cosmic messengers continue to talk about these new rays of the
Yeah.
sun, how each ray has its own life or vibrancy. And the larger picture started to emerge. And the true picture didn't come into place until last year, 2020, when I realized they were talking about these changes with COVID. They were talking about how our planet would change and we wouldn't recognize life. Things have changed so much for us, but this was, as you say, way back in 2013. But this larger picture was starting to emerge, indicated that we, you know, earthlings, are not the only ones getting help.
Okay.
We had this cosmic council of helpers that are actually overseeing other stars, not just our sun. This huge perspective made me realize how small we are, yet how important we are that they're helping us.
Mhm.
The more I connected with these cosmic beings, the more I realized how comfortable I was beginning to grow with them. They made me actually feel at home.
You know, Candy, I just want to tell people, you know, because the way we're doing the chapters now, I really suggest you go back and read through the pages 86 through 89 to really look at those messages and realize it is timing and perspective. It's these were she was talking about 2013 and we're in 2021 and how these new rays are impacting Earth now. And you can see all the changes that are happening in the Earth. You will learn through these messages why our cosmic contacts cannot send healing directly to us, directly to Earth. And Kenny, I don't want to give everything away right now, but we're going to learn later that that will change. But let's go ahead and go to pages 82. I'm sorry, 92 to 94. Those pages, and we're going to talk about two Earths and Gaia, and realize that now we're skipping ahead about 15 months for you from the last messages, and now we're in May of 2015.
It had been a 15-month break since I had heard from them, but my life was filled day by day with many other messages that I had gotten from others. Sometimes they were the repeat performers, but I realized it had been 15 months and I hadn't had any kind of information from my cosmic friends. So I thought, okay, it's time to check in, see what's going on, see what I could pick up. So I opened up and they came immediately. And I learned that things were improving for our planet. In this first message on page 92, they start talking about Earth, but not calling it our planet or Earth. They refer to her as Gaia, the spirit of Mother Earth. That was perfectly in alignment with the spiritual nature of the shift, that December 21st, 2012 date that we talked about earlier. And these messages on 92 and 93 reference this ongoing transition of our planet as she transcends to higher vibrational frequencies. At the end of the messages, I had this beautiful vision that I described starting at the bottom of 93. And
Mhm.
you know, you can read it, but I saw these magnificent blue-green Earths. There were two of them, and they drifted slowly toward each other.
Mm.
And in the background was this velvety, starless void of deep space. It reminds me a lot of the background that you have. But these two Earths met and began to overlap. And as they did, they stopped when they were in perfect alignment. And they created a single, perfect, magnificent Earth. And I knew that this new Earth represented more than both of those blue-green planets combined. Then on the top of page 94, I describe, and I don't need to read it because I can still tell
Yeah.
you, it feels like this happened yesterday. I describe zooming over the landscape, and I'm like Superwoman style, just flying through the air, and it was so real. When I passed over waterfalls, I could feel the spray of that on my face. I soared over jungles and I could feel the heat and the dampness of the jungle coming up. I flew over deserts, mountains, and plains. And I realized that this vision represented this new earth. It was perfect and balanced. And Donna, this was a tipping point for me. I stopped seeing Earth as the planet where I lived, and I started seeing her as a living, breathing spirit. And I fully understood that she was Gaia. She was the spirit of our beautiful planet. You know, these last few messages gave new meaning to life. And I know that we are never alone. Plants, animals, rocks, planets, stars are living sentient beings. It brought me back to that mystical experience I had on that first day after my morning commute, that mystical experience with that royal poinciana tree.
You know, Candy, thank you for sharing that. I know it brings back a lot of emotion for you, but when you were reading it, um, I could imagine, I could see those two Earths. And I love that you described coming back to your mystical experience with the poinciana tree. And if people could learn, if we, through this, why we're doing this, if you can learn to experience the world beyond your physical senses, you can see with your mind's eye, you can see differently. And, you know, you can look at our surroundings like you did with the poinciana tree, and your visions of the two Earth, they become so real. And it's feeling more real than three-dimensional. And that's what I experienced in my near-death experience. And so what I tried telling people about that is there are things on the other side that you can't experience here, but people that have had NDEs, if you listen to what we say, we maybe could provide you with the possibilities of what's real and alive. For example, on the other side, trees, flowers, mountains, rocks, rivers, ocean, they all talk over there. They all have a voice over there. So for me, when I came back, it's almost like it opened that possibility for me of hearing, beginning to maybe, you know, can I hear things on this side? And I can begin to sense things other than it's physical. I can begin to hear them talking and what they might be saying. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Donna. You know, one thing this vision gave me was the opportunity to actually step into those frequencies that go well beyond the physical body. You're actually, like during your NDE, you're actually in a different dimensional space, and you have this new realization.
Mm-hmm.
We realize how limited we are with our physical senses, and we realize that truth can be found outside of our three-dimensional world. It's all about change. It's learning to look at the world differently, look at our environment differently with a different perspective. And for me, when I started viewing the earth as a living, breathing spirit, it makes me think twice about how I treat her. It's not, you know, this is a living being. So this is a change that came about through a change for me that came about through my vision that I had. And talking about change, the next set of messages that we have are talking about changes. More and more changes were occurring. Now, more cosmic doorways had opened.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is now our Earth could receive energy directly from other cosmic entities. Now, remember, initially over 2 years before when it started, those frequencies from Alpha Centauri and Chiron were too strong to directly affect Earth. So they had to go through an intermediary. They had to go through their sister star, our sun, to change those frequencies. But these messages told me that there was a much larger cosmic team helping us than what I was aware of. And this concluded with a very bizarre and fascinating experience. Again, it was like one of those things, oh, do I put this in the book? But sorry, I just had to.
Got to.
So this experience, it was the beginning, actually a beginning of my connection to a Merkaba, which you can learn about that later, and Archangel Metatron. In fact, Donna, in my second book, The Reluctant Messenger Returns, I devote 2 chapters to Archangel Metatron. But skipping over to pages 97 and 98, I describe another vision. Okay, it's not like I'm zooming above the earth and everything's wonderful. It's a vision where all of a sudden I have this bar of light that goes straight through my heart and then makes this 90-degree angle and connects above my head. But I end up being engulfed in a pyramid of light. And during this experience, I come face to face, this was a first for me, with a being, a person, in quotes, from the Pleiades named Zahur. And on page 98, they, because it's not really a male, it's not really a female, combination of both, but they introduce themselves as a being of light. And they tell me that they don't inhabit a physical form. And Zahur comes out and says that he or she is the spokesperson for this group. Now, first of all, when they say that they don't inhabit a physical form, I realize they did take a physical form, but I knew that was for my benefit. But I saw this egg-shaped ball of light that was filled with golden sparkles. And it started moving and like blending and coalescing until it was a humanoid form. Yeah. As I looked, Zahur had light wavy hair that fell just above the shoulders. They had really large round eyes, no mouth that I could see. All communication was telepathic. On the top of page 99, the message said that they are watching out over us. And let me get to page 99. And they say, there are more of my kind gathering to watch and observe as your humanity begins its ascension process. The energies are right. The time is right. Open your hearts to hear the messages we bestow upon you. It brought tears to my eyes. Oh, yeah. Donna, I realized we are not alone. We have help from a galactic team of brothers and sisters. They are here to watch and to help us with our awakening. Now, once again, after the fact research, good old Google here, I Googled Pleiades. Okay. And I learned that, first of all, it's known as the Seven Sisters. I didn't know that. Yep. So once again, there's that magical 7. I also learned that you can see constellations, only from specific locations during certain times of the year. But the Pleiades is different. It's visible from almost every place on Earth, from the North Pole to the southern tip of South America, and anytime. And so to me, that was a validation of all the candidates that would be perfect to watch over us is someone who can literally watch over us all the time. You can't make this up.
Can't make it up.
But then Zahur, I looked up that name. It absolutely blew me away. On page 99, I talk about
Mhm.
what happened when I entered Zahur in a search engine to find its origins. First of all, there was an Arabic name, Zahur, and it translated into words like brilliant and radiant. I thought, wow. And then on another site, I saw the Swahili translation. I couldn't believe it. What does Zahur mean in Swahili? Flower.
Come on, you can't make this up, people. Come on. Really? Because this is 2015? You got the flower in 2013? You're like, what?
Right. The greatest lesson I learned, not only have I traveled from all the way into this chapter, I started off having mediumship and then learning a little bit more about this and that, my comfort zone stretching out. And then now I'm actually meeting a being, but flower, a brilliant flower, radiant flower. But the biggest lesson in all of this to me, Donna, was
Okay.
learning that we are not alone. And like our galactic brothers and sisters, we too are brilliant stars. We are those shining flowers that I'd learned about during my 10-minute commute to work back in August of 2013. We are the flowers of energy. We are reaching up toward the cosmos. And what I'm learning is to the open arms of our cosmic friends who are not only watching, but helping us through Gaia's evolutionary transition to wholeness. It was crazy.
You know, it's just, you know, you think chapter 6, cosmic contacts, and you think, okay, what the heck's this about? But how amazing this is in realizing the importance of healing Gaia, that we have a role in it and that we have help in it. Gaia's, her transitions, um, cosmic beings, and really when we step out onto the earth to look at her a little differently. And I love that your messengers were weaving flowers through all these messages.
Yes.
And talk about the change of frequencies. As a scientist, I've been following the Schumann resonance for some time. I think you guys know about that, and about how she, you know, how Gaia, how Earth has these frequencies and how they are changing. And if you want to know more about that, because as a teacher, I'd like to give you a great article. And we're going to put the link in the description below this video from a website called Sound Intentions. And it's the Schumann resonance. Is it changing? And it is changing. So you can also begin to track the changes that have occurred in the frequency. I find that very fascinating. You know what? So there's a lot of validation. There's lots of science behind what's being said too, and I love that part. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I realize, I don't know about you, but so many of us, including myself, I haven't really been paying attention to Earth, but things were really changing for me with these cosmic beings.
Yeah.
And I was learning that, there is hope out there. These cosmic beings were sharing messages of hope, of clarity, of healing. But guess what?
What?
There's more.
There's more.
In our next episode, we will cover chapter 6, heavenly help. So we're going to learn about even more assistance that's around. But next time it will be from our angels.
That's crazy. Candy, I can't wait. And I'm paying more attention now, thanks to your messages. I mean, I think I was paying pretty good attention, but
Yeah.
and I'm really happy to help in this transition. So reluctant messenger unleashed nation. Your homework, one, help Gaia. First thing is always to become aware. So become aware. Number two, to help Gaia. How can you help her? Well, there's lots of websites and places that you can go to how to help clean up the earth, how your part in it. But your homework also, number three, is to read chapter 6, Heavenly Help. That's your homework.
That's your homework. Don't forget.
Be kind to your mother and be kind to one another.
There you go. I like that, Donna. That's going to be my mantra. Be kind to your mother. Be kind to one another.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Got it. Bye.